this webinar, how to make a short film for the absolute beginner. I would like to thank the Catapult Arts Grant who's funding this webinar. And it's also sponsored by the American Friends of Jamaica, Fresh Milk in Barbados, and Kingston Creative. So thank you so much to those sponsors for making it possible. And I'm Danielle Russell. I am a filmmaker, but I specialize in writing and directing. And over the years, I have done other roles on film sets. I got into filmmaking in 2005. I made my first short film in 2006. And since then, I've directed several short films that have been screened internationally, including narrative film and documentary film. And I'm currently working on my first feature film. I'm working on the screenplay for my first feature film. I also have lectured in storytelling and screenwriting at the University of Technology, Jamaica. I was a film workshop facilitator at the Rubis Impulse Art Project. And I'm also the film advisor at the Tide Rising Art Projects, which is an artist-led initiative in Jamaica. I have a BA in media and communication, and then I also have an MFA in film and TV production. And so since then, I've been working in film and sharing knowledge about film. And it's been since I learned about film, it's been a hobby of mine, I would say, to let as many people know about film as possible, because I do really believe in the power of a good story and the power of a good film. So I'm really happy to have all of you here. So as you can see on the side, these are some films that I've directed. And this is a still from the first film I made in 2006. Okay. So the topics that I'm going to cover today there are 6 topics. First, the very first thing that I will cover is your filmmaking goals, because in making a short film, I think it is important to know why it is you want to make a film so that you can get the most out of your film. Then the next thing I'll cover are the 5 stages in filmmaking, in film production, I should say. And I'll go in order of the stages. And so this will be a good guide as to how to start getting your first short film done. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, so your filmmaking goals. The first thing, before we get into it, the 5 stages. Why do you want to make a film? And I encourage you to get out your paper, get out your pen and write it down, why you want to make a film, and be completely honest, because if you're completely honest, then you will actually get what you want out of it. If not, you might be a little bit disappointed. So what I mean is, do you want exposure for the film? Do you just want to, is it a new hobby you want to take up? Is it something you've always wanted to do? Do you want to make money from it? It's very important to know why it is you want to make a film, and also how you can achieve the goals that you want. And so the other 2 questions, what will you do with your film once it's complete, feeds into why you want to make the film. And the third question is, how much time and resources are you willing and able to give to the film? And by time and resources, I mean, how much money are you able to give to this film, because film does cost money. How many human resources, how many people do you have available to assist you in the film? How much equipment do you have? Do you have your own camera? Are you going to have to rent your camera? Do you have transportation to go to location? Are you going to have to drive around the place looking for transportation? Can you use your own house? Things like that. The resources, your time. Do you have a full-time job? Are you going to have to do this on the side? Are you a student, etc.? Things like that are questions to ask yourself in order to ensure that you don't overwhelm yourself the first time you're making a short film. All right, so once you answer those questions, I'm going to just go ahead and jump into the stages. Now, the 5 stages I mentioned of film production, they were developed specifically to aid in the process of making it easy enough for someone to create a film, because it can get pretty messy. It really can get pretty messy if you're not really sure where to start. And so knowing these 5 stages and going in this order is an excellent way to make the process go a lot more smoothly. So development, the first stage of development is when the idea creation and fleshing out the idea, writing the story, getting the film. Essentially, you're developing the story that you're going to use to turn into a film. And this is the part that's often not really spoken about a lot. It can be very, it's usually a very internal process, because it's usually yourself or someone else sitting down and coming up with these ideas. Now, how do you go about coming up with these ideas that you want to develop, and what makes a good short film? Once you have the idea, how do you go about and develop it? And then we'll talk about creating a treatment and then writing a script. Okay, so what makes a good short film? Before we even get into coming up with ideas, what makes a good short film? The interesting thing is that many persons, before making their first short film, they watch a lot of feature films. And a short film is any film that's under 40 minutes. A feature film is anything that's longer than 40 minutes long. So many of the films we watch in theaters or so on, a lot of them are feature films. And so when it comes to coming up with ideas for a short film, what I often find happening, or tends to happen usually, even with me, it happens sometimes, is you'll come up with a really great idea, and then you'll try to stuff it into a short film, but it's not working. And then what you realize is that the story it's just too much happening in the story. There's too many characters, there are too many storylines, there's just too much. And so a story that requires many characters, many storylines, would be more suited for a feature film, which is anything over 40 minutes. Whereas a good short film would focus on an idea, or will focus on a moment. So you'll see a poster on the bottom for a film called Snapshot Kingston by David Johnson. He's a Jamaican filmmaker. It was made in 2016. He made this film about a man who is planning a day for his girlfriend. And so the entire film is just about that moment where he's preparing for to share the day with his girlfriend. And he's thinking about all the things that they're going to do. And that's the entire film. Another thing that makes a good short film is to tell a full story or leave the audience yearning for more. So let me explain. As I mentioned before, many persons tend to try and stuff the idea of a feature film into a short film. And so what you find, what ends up happening is sometimes the story is unfinished because it's just not possible to completely to completely cover the entire story. So a good short film you should be able to have the entire arc happening, so the beginning, middle, and end of a story, and that will leave the audience feeling satisfied at the end. Other models for short films is you can use a short, if you actually have an idea for the feature, so the idea you want to make is much longer than a short film can handle. What you could do is you could take a scene from that feature and make that the short film. And that short film, which is representative of the longer version, would tell the audience what the longer film is about, while at the same time leaving them yearning to want to know more about the story. So if you find yourself with the idea that it just seems to not be working in a shorter time, then you can take a small scene and that gives an idea and make that the short film. And so the film Whiplash by Damien Chazelle is a very good example. Both short films, Snapshot Kingston and Whiplash, are online, so you can have a look at those. Whiplash, he had an idea for the longer version of the film, also called Whiplash. And what he did was he took a key scene, a very important scene from the film, and he made it into a short film, which he then was able to use to get people interested in his feature-length film. So both of those are online, so you can have a look at how those both were done. The last point about what makes a good short film is show, don't tell. So for persons who are new to filmmaking, we're used to books, reading a lot, or we're used to watching theater plays. And a lot of theater plays or books, they're very wordy. They will write out everything that happens, or in theater plays, persons they'll do a lot of talking. So they'll describe their emotion. They'll say, I'm so happy to see you, or they will give soliloquies, or things like that. But in film, what's very important is the visuals. It's very important to tell a story through visuals rather than what the characters say. So the more dialogue in a film, it tends to be less interesting. Generally, this is clearly not a hard and fast rule, but generally speaking. And so when you're coming up with ideas for a short film, think about what would make very good images, and what strong images would tell a story well. Before I move on, I just want to say that a lot of what I'm speaking of here is from experience and from what I've learned, but of course there are no hard and fast rules, because people have done films that have focused on more than just an idea and more than just a moment, that have a lot of dialogue, and it works. But these are general ideas that for persons who are new to film and are making a film for the first time, this is advice I would give you, and this is also advice I followed when I started. Okay, so now you know what makes a good short film. Let's talk about how you find that idea. Now, where you find that idea, I encourage you to do what's authentic to you. So I know you're here because you're curious about filmmaking. You probably have an idea already. Use that idea that you have. Use what's authentic to you. Use what's authentic to your past experiences. Some of the places that I get my ideas from are, as I mentioned, past experiences, stories that others have told me. I've heard some of the most amazing stories, and I'm sure you have as well. The news. Oh, sorry. The news. There are lots of very interesting stories in the news. Just give me a second, please. Just need to Admit someone. Okay. There are lots of interesting stories in the news. I mean, we even have in the news in Jamaica, we have a segment called Bite of the Week, and we have some of the most interesting interviewees in that segment. So you could take that segment and just make it into a whole story. Observation. A lot of persons like to go to coffee shops and observe, or even at work, you can observe the way people interact with each other. You can observe various scenarios that take place. Those are excellent places to get ideas for short film. Also, you can look at folklore, fairy tales, books that you read, nonfiction work that you read, including biographies, history books. There are lots of movies based off of history. And then the last one, using your imagination. I like to use something called the magical what if, and I'm actually borrowing this from an acting technique where actors are told to imagine what a character would do if they were in such and such a position. So I like to use that for my purpose and say, what would happen if so and so, and then make a story from that. So for example, what would happen if a barber found himself one day working in a bakery? What would happen if that happened? So that's also a very interesting way to come up with an idea for a story, the magic what if, because I call it magical because anything can happen in the imagination. And what I have been doing for a long time is I have dreams as well. Dreams are also a great place. So I have an idea book that I use to write down any ideas I have, any dreams that I have, and it's a small one so I can carry it around. And I would also suggest that as well, to just carry it around, and because you never know when you might have a good idea, and it's highly likely that you might forget the idea if you don't write it down. Okay, so now that you have the idea, so these are some examples of films that have used different methods of getting stories. So How to Kill a Fish is a film I did in 2017. And it was based on an experience that I had. Origins is a short Jamaican film by Kurt Wright, and that was based on Jamaican folklore. And then the new Bike, this one, the third film, was based on a news article or a magazine article that came out. So these are all films that use different methods of getting, of coming up with an idea for the story. Okay, so that I'm going to share with you now, developing the idea, because the idea is usually maybe one sentence, but you need to have that, you need to develop that now into a full story. So these are the steps that I have come up with, and others have used as well. So I'm recommending to you, these are the steps you can use to come up with a full fleshed out story that you can now use to create a short film. So step one is the idea, which we just spoke about. You can either dreams, folklore, etc. Step two is the treatment. Step two is a treatment. So a treatment is something about like the story version of the idea. So it's almost like you write a prose version of what your idea would be. And then step three, you take that idea and you expand them into what are called beats. So beats are essentially the turning points in the story. And what that is the important events that happen to move a story forward. So for example, if someone is going to the store to buy bread, they might have left, they are in their house, that's the opening, that's their environment. Then they leave the house and someone stops them on the way and asks them for money or steals their money from them. That's a second beat, because that's an important point in the story, because their goal was to get bread. So now without money, they can't buy bread. So the next beat might be how they're trying to figure out how to get money to buy bread, and so on and so forth. And then until you get to the resolution, which is, did they get the bread or did they not get the bread? So story beat cards are, you write out in more detail exactly what happens. And this does not include dialogue. It includes characters, main characters, locations, and main actions. You write all of those out on to small cards. And then what you do is you can put them up on a wall. I like to put them up on walls. You put them up on the wall, or you can also put them on a table, etc. And these are great because you can shift the points around in the story. And this is a great way to get an idea, a clear idea, and a snapshot of exactly what your story will look like without having to rewrite pages and pages of a treatment. Now, once you've done that and you're happy with the flow of your story, you can now move on to writing a script, a screenplay. And the screenplay is the most detailed of all, because it includes dialogue, it includes specific actions, it includes the actors that say the dialogue, it includes everything, whether the action is happening inside or outside, wherever. So that is a general flow that I use in developing an idea for a film. So first there's idea, then, which is probably just one sentence or a paragraph. Then you move on to the treatment, which is the idea expanded into, several paragraphs. Then you move on to the story beat cards, which is the paragraphs expanded into main actions, characters, and locations. Then you move on to the script, which is more developed, which includes everything that you would need for your film. Okay. And so of all of those steps, the one that I know is might be a little bit new is the script. So screenplays are formatted very specifically because they're almost like a blueprint for a film. And so some free screenwriting software that you can try your hand at is Write a Duet, as well as Celtics or Celtics, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but these two are very good. They're online. I think both of them can be downloaded. They do have paid options as well. But if you're new to screenwriting, then you can try these out and try your hand at screenwriting. There are a multitude of articles online about how to write screenplays. And the reason why it's very important to use screenplays as opposed to just using Word is because screenplays have been formatted since the beginning of film, since film began, screenplays have been formatted to allow for proper planning for your film. So for example, one page of a screenplay, a properly formatted screenplay, equals to 1 minute of production time. So if it's properly formatted, it allows you to be very precise with your planning and budgeting and all of that. So we'll go over that later, a little bit later down, so you can understand why it's so important to properly format your screenplay. Okay. All right, so now once you have your screenplay, we now move on to pre-production. Now, pre-production to me is the most important part of a film. of filmmaking, because usually when production, which is when you're shooting, usually you don't really have much time to be figuring things out on the fly. So pre-production is really your time to figure things out and ensure that things go smoothly. Now in pre-production, main aspects for me are directing preparation, budget and crew, and planning and logistics. So in directing prep, what is that? For directing prep, it's how do you want to direct your film? How do you want your film to look and feel? And this is really important to plan in advance, because otherwise you might find yourself just ending up with a film that's all over the place, that has no real direction. And also you might end up wasting a lot of time trying to figure things out on the fly. So some of the things that I would recommend you pay attention to once you have your script is, what kind of props do you want to use? What kind of costume, and your locations. Then once you figured out your props, you can now look at the script and create what is called a shot list. A shot list is essentially a list of the types of camera angles, camera sizes, and so on that you would like to see for your film. So you can see here there's an example of a shot list, and this is from a shot list that I created a couple months ago for a film called Zingy. So you break it down into scenes. So scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and then different shots. So different shots are, as I mentioned, different angles, and you number or you letter the shots rather than number them. So you have scene 1, shot A. So for scene 1, shot A, I want to see everything, so it's a wide shot. Then for the very same scene, I want a closer angle, so it's scene 1, shot 1B, and so on and so forth. Your shot list can be as detailed as you want, or as not as detailed. This one is not very detailed, but I've color coded it to make it very easy to identify on the day of production. So you can include the characters that will be in there, the props, notes. So as you can see here, I added a line and so on. So this document is very important and very crucial to know the order that you want to shoot your film in, the types of shots you want, and so on. That phrase "time is money" has never been more true than in film, I would say. So in order to ensure that you are making the best use of time, it's best to plan all of these things in advance. Scout, finding your location, you need to do a location scout, because when the time comes to shoot a film, that's not the time to start driving around and trying to figure out where you're going to shoot, or where in your house you're going to shoot, if you're shooting in your house, for example, because that alone could take a couple hours. Now, a scout is, so you see two phrases here: scouting and technical scouting. The scouting is when you drive around to find what location you actually want to use. Then once you have found the location, you're going to technical scout, which is, okay, how can I make this location work to my advantage? And I'll show you an example of that. So for a short film I did, I went on a scout. And it's important to go at the exact time that you would like it to go, to shoot the film, sorry. So in this film, I'm looking very tired and everything because I wanted to get the sunrise. And so it wouldn't make sense to go in the middle of the day because I wouldn't know what the location looked like. So I got up at very early in the morning, went to look at the location, and as you can see, this is what it looks like. I was happy with it, and then this is what the result looks like in the film. So I had to ensure that it matched, and I was happy with it, so we ended up using it. So it's important to go at the time that you need it. In addition to prepping for the script, prepping for locations, rehearsals with your actors and actresses, very, very, very important. I recently shot a film where I did a lot of rehearsals, most rehearsals I've done ever. And I was able to quickly shoot the scenes with the actors without much effort because of rehearsal. So it's very important to conduct rehearsals. There are some filmmakers that don't do rehearsals, so try it and see if you like it. It might not be for you, but so far I found it to be important. It's something you can definitely try, or you can just try improv as well. That is an option as well. Okay. Other things you can do to prepare in advance is creating things like a set plan. So this is a set plan I created for a short film I did called How to Kill a Fish. I did a drawing of the layout of the location I was using, and as you probably can see these tiny red rectangles, these were outlets. So I needed to know where I could plug in lights, I could recharge batteries, things like that. And this was also useful for me to decide where I could place the camera and so on. Okay. Another important factor in pre-production is your budget and crew. Now, if you are creating a short film, for the first time, you may not have a budget, but that's important to know. Or you may decide that you want to spend some money on your film. That's also important to know. So create a budget, even if it's $0. I would say it's good to know what this actually cost you, and or what it would have cost if you had spent money. Because for me, a no budget film simply means that people are working for free, including yourself. You're not paying yourself, or you're using your money out of pocket. So you create a budget so you can know what it would cost. And I would say it's very important to provide your crew with food and drink. Now, you can shoot a film yourself, acting it yourself, shoot it yourself, and so on, and then it costs you no money. But if you do want to bring people on board, it could cost you some money. I strongly advise to have food and drink available, especially if you're not paying the person's helping, even if it's your friends, your family, and so on. Because when people are hungry and thirsty, they're not at their most productive anyway. So it's very important. A no budget film would be, maybe your family and friends bringing their own food, but again, it does cost something. You may want to buy props for your film. You may need to print in the script and so on. You may want to purchase equipment. All of those things would cost money. So even if it comes out of pocket, there is still a budget. So it is important to know, because if you do want to do a second film, a third film, a fourth film, you need to know how much it will cost for certain things, for food and drink, how much people will charge, and so on. The more locations you have, the more money you'll have to spend in things like transportation. Maybe you might have to pay for a location. Also, the more characters, the more food you'll have to pay for people, to buy for people or provide, the more you'll have to pay in salary if you are opting to pay your actors, or if they're volunteering, is what I mean. The more, the bigger your story, if you have explosions, for example, that will cost more money, as opposed to if you have 2 persons in a room with 2 chairs. You'd have a much lower budget. So your budget definitely informs, the story definitely informs the budget, and your budget and story can also inform your crew. So for example, if you have like recently I did a film where it was across generations. So actors and actresses had to look older and younger at various times in the film. And so that would obviously cost more because that would require things like latex. The makeup artist would have to use things like latex, whereas if it were just natural makeup happening in, you know, over the course of a day, it wouldn't be as expensive. So things like wounds and gunshots and, you know, somebody being hit and they have to have black and blue, they have a black and blue eye, things like that would definitely cost more. And so you might need to pay for a makeup artist. You might need to pay for a makeup artist as opposed to maybe you could get away with doing it yourself if it's just natural makeup. So the crew, the persons you need to consider are the director, a producer, a cinematographer, and so on. Now, before I started, I should have mentioned that if you, I'm speaking about creating a short film from the point of view of a writer, director, producer. Now, the writer, as I had gone through earlier, is the person who writes the screenplay. The director is the person who decides on the creative look and feel of the film. The producer is the person who ensures that the film gets made. So they find the money, they hire crew members, they organize everything. And so for someone who's creating their first film, I'm speaking from the point of view of somebody who is a all-in-one writer, director, producer, because that's usually the most feasible option. On bigger film sets, it can be separated. You have a separate writer, a separate director, a separate producer, or it can be a writer, producer, or a writer, director, any combination really. But for this webinar, I am going to assume that you would be your own writer, your own director, and your own producer. So that's why I don't have them listed on the crew. Now, the other crew members you would need are a cinematographer. So a cinematographer is the person who is, you know, they call them a lighting artist. So essentially, it's the film version of a photographer. They're responsible for capturing the image and making sure the image is beautifully, comes across in the way that you want it visually. Then you'd also need someone to record the sound. The sound is extremely crucial in a film, and people will not forgive. They might forgive bad visuals, but they will not forgive bad sound. Also, so that's something that you really should think about, and having just recording from your camera might not be sufficient. Production manager is the person who deals with logistics of the production. So while the director and the cinematographer and the sound recordist are trying to capture the actors, there are other things that need to happen. You know, maybe people are walking across the set, maybe food needs to get sorted out. You know, there needs to be first aid kit on set and so on. So the production manager deals with all the logistics. The HMU is the hair and makeup artist. The hair and makeup artist ensures that your cast, they don't look sweaty. They ensure that they look they're age appropriate. Is that, you know, the makeup you want to get the feeling that you want in your scene and so on. So they're very important. Production assistants are persons that just help generally. They help everyone at any time to do anything. And they're actually very invaluable. And there are several other roles, but these are the key ones that I've mentioned if you were to make your own short film, your first short film. So once you have the budget and crew sorted out, we can now move on to logistics. So we need to think about things like when the shoot dates and times. When do you need to happen based on your script? If your script is set in the night, you know, it wouldn't make sense to do a shoot from 8 a.m. to say 12 p.m. You need to plan accordingly. Then you need to think about availability of food and water. So as I mentioned, it's really important to feed your crew and have proper refreshment, because it can get very taxing. Standing on your feet, trying to get everything you need in the limited time can get very taxing, and so it's important to have food and water available. It's also important to have restrooms and parking and so on available. Contracts are also very important because you do need to legally have your actors and crew say that they're willing to release their image. You do also want to have contracts for your crew members. Now, if it's your very first short film that you're just doing for fun, usually people forego this. But if you want to get more into it, it's very important to have contracts. I saw someone wrote in a forum somewhere that they did a short film when they were younger, and they recently found it a couple years later, and they want to release it publicly, but they're not sure if the actors would want them to release it publicly, so they had to withhold. Now, if they had contracts, they wouldn't have that question at all. So you never can tell, when it might be important. Okay. So once you've done you have your budget and crew, you have your planning and logistics, then you're ready to actually do the production, the actual shoot. And to me, I like to equate production to hosting an event. And you do all the prep in advance for the event. So you do all the pre-production to do the production, which is a shoot. And there's not really much I just have some advice on things to do on the shoot day. So that would make things run a lot more smoothly, because if you do all your pre-production, it's really just to follow the plans that you laid. So for the shoot, some advice I have is to just be, as a writer, director, producer, just be ready and present in the moment and ready to make decisions, because no matter how much you plan, things will always change. So you're going to need to decide, if you should, what should be done. It's and the more quickly you're able to decide, the faster your production can go. You need to, as I mentioned before, feed your cast and crew well. Ensure you stick to the schedule, because if you don't stick to the schedule, you'll have a half-finished movie, or you'll have to go back another time, which will cost more money. Dress comfortably. There will be a lot of standing, lots of walking up and down, might be hot. So dress comfortably. You don't want to be in heels or tight clothes or anything. Dress comfortably and allow, if you know it's going to be in somewhere that's hot, wear something that's cool, and keep hydrated. Water is very important. Something I forgot to mention is that the producer usually is the one who holds the rights to the film, or shares in the rights to the film. So if you produce the film, then it's yours. You can do what you want with it. If someone else produces your film, then you will have to discuss with them, if somebody buys it from you, how you'd split the money. You'd have to discuss if you can show it. You both of you would have to discuss those things. So the producer has just as much rights as the director, or sometimes more. Okay, so that's the shoot. Now, once you've done the shoot and you've captured everything, we're going to the post-production stage. So in the post-production stage, this is taking all the footage that you've shot on the camera, and you are going to shape it into your film. Now, these are just some things to think about in post-production. So once you have the footage, it's very important that you log the footage. And logging the footage means that you make a record of, you save it to somewhere, you make a record of the footage that you have, so that you are aware, what you have to work with. This stage can get very messy if you're not organized. So once you've logged the footage, you arrange them into folders, and you have labeled them correctly, then you can start the process of video editing. And I'm going to discuss digital video editing here. So, you probably heard of Final Cut, Premiere Pro, and so on. Those are digital video editing software that you can use. So you will import the raw footage, and you can begin the process of cutting I won't go into the details of editing. You can, that would be a whole nother webinar, but you can always get a video editing software and practice. And actually, there's a very good free editing software called DaVinci Resolve, which you can download if you are interested in doing some practice edits. It's actually a industry standard software, and it's free. So it's a great software for practicing. It has all the tools that you'll need to make a very good film. Now, once you're done putting the video together, you want to now work on your sound design. So the sound that you record, usually you'll record dialogue usually, but in order to create a realistic world, you'll need to design the environment. So you might need to, add some birds, or you might need to add amplify some sounds, like maybe something fell. You might need to amplify the sound of a book falling. You really need to ensure that the sound is cleaned up. You can hear everything on equal levels in terms of audio. You don't want your this is where you would add your background music, and you don't want music to be louder than the characters, etc. So you really have to ensure that the sound is equally as pleasing as your video. Okay, so just to go to login footage, some more advice. I would advise to keep your raw footage on separate hard drive, 2 separate hard drives, in case something happens to one. You always have it somewhere else, and try not to keep it in the same location, because, for example, if rain falls and accidentally one gets wet, then the other might more than likely will get wet. So it's good to have 2 separate hard drives in separate places. And then I had mentioned folders and having a naming system for your footage. Okay, so I had spoken about sound. So you want to sync sound. So what that is okay, sometimes you might not record the video and sound together. So you might not record it directly into the camera. You might decide to have a separate sound recording device, because it sounds better. In that case, you'd have to you'd have to sync them, to ensure that you get them, to ensure that the video is matching the sound that you recorded. And so how you sync it is, you might have seen what they call a clapboard, where they say scene 1, shot 2, take 1, and then they clap. The clap is so that you're able to easily sync the sound. So that's what that's for. Clean sound, I have spoken to that already. You want to ensure that the sound you capture on the day of production is as clean as possible, meaning if characters are talking, you don't want to hear a truck blaring past, or a horn beeping, or music blaring, because then what happens is that you can't hear the characters. In addition, it might completely change the mood of your film. So it's really important to get clean sound, or to clean it up afterwards. Things like a horn blaring, you can't really clean that up, but things like maybe, if there's empty space, you probably, or there's music in an empty space, you probably can clean that up by removing that and then adding some more natural sounds. And then recreating the sound I had mentioned is things like adding sounds that will make the world feel realistic. Okay, now we're moving on to the last stage of the film production process, which is distribution. And distribution is simply getting your film seen, how you get your film seen. And there are many ways. There are many ways of getting your film seen, and here I'm just listing 4. So if you're creating your first film, you might be interested in having it online, like on YouTube. And this distribution section is actually where it's really important to find out what your goals are, because depending on your goals, it really will impact how you distribute your film. So if you distribute it online, for example, like on YouTube, on a free platform, you might not get paid upfront for it unless it gets thousands of views. But if you want to see your film, if you want your film to be seen by many people, then that might be the way to go. So online you have YouTube, you have Vimeo, which is similar to YouTube, but it's more for, I find it's more used for persons in film. Quail TV and Studio Anansi TV are examples of subscription platforms. So you can talk to them and get your film on their platform. And what that is people subscribe to the website, and it's a pay-per-view, I believe, platform. And so at the end of the month, you get paid. Usually not much, really, but you do get paid something. So I actually have a film on both Quail TV and Studio Nancy, and it does allow for more persons to see my film than I probably would have been able to get on my own. So the second way of distribution is film festivals. So film festivals are essentially they're gatherings where people come together to watch film. And some film festivals are extremely prestigious. For example, these are the top 5 international film festivals: Festival de Cannes, Toronto International Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, Berlin Film Festival, and Sundance. Those are the top 5 film festivals. And if you are someone who you're interested in becoming a filmmaker, or you're interested in improving your standing in the filmmaking world, or you're interested in getting laurels, which are like laurels are what you get when you get accepted to a festival, and that can really boost your career as a filmmaker. If that is your goal, to really improve your standing, then film festivals are the way to go. You'll hear a lot of professional filmmakers talk about showing at Cannes or showing at Sundance, because the thing is that when you show at these places, if you get into these festivals, your career suddenly skyrockets. It's very good for your career. I shouldn't say it suddenly skyrockets, but it's very good for your career. There are thousands and thousands of film festivals. Some of them are very tiny, some of them are large. There are a lot more important film festivals, but these are the top 5 that people are usually interested in getting into. And so if your goal is to, become a serious filmmaker, then distributing via film festivals might be the way to go. And also, once you screen at film festivals, it's likely that other persons might be interested in you, say, directing for them or writing for them. Other distribution platforms might be interested in actually buying your film, and so you can get paid for your film that way. Film festivals also have competitions for short films. The Clermont-Ferrand International Film Festival is actually the best film festival for short films, and they do have competitions where if you win the competition, you actually get sometimes $5,000, $10,000 US or more, depending on the festival. Another way to distribute is via private or public screenings. So this can be held anywhere. It can be held in your house. You can organize festivals in community buildings and so on. So this is a festival, a screening, that I planned in 2015. The other one is film markets. Another way to distribute is film markets. So companies actually come to film markets like a market, and like an actual market, and they buy films. So this was a film festival I attended, the Clermont-Ferrand International Film Festival. As you can see behind me, there are all these booths, and those are people, countries, etc., trying to sell their films to companies, to distribution companies, who will buy and then put your film on TV or in cinema, etc. Now, as if you're new to filmmaking, distribution companies might not necessarily be the way to go, but it's something you can you can definitely go for eventually. Or they might actually be, it might actually be the way to go for you. As I mentioned, nothing I say is hard and fast. So you might find that you find a distribution company that is really interested to distribute your film. So those are the 5 stages of filmmaking that we've covered. So we spoke about your goals, then we spoke about the development of a film, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. So now I'd love to hear from you to find out if you have any questions, to answer any questions that you might have. And if you have your own experiences in filmmaking that might be helpful for others on this call.
Hi. Do you hear
Hi,
me?
I can hear you.
Okay, it's Esaf, by the way.
ASAP. Okay.
Okay. When it comes to like getting your shots done or whatnot, how often do you practice in those
Uh,
few scenes?
yeah. Well, it's up to you really. I would advise practicing. I don't think you have to do overkill. But it's really up to you as a filmmaker. You can. I have done. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Okay. I have done films where I haven't practiced at all, and I have also done films where I have practiced. And I would definitely say it is beneficial to practice. It definitely goes a lot faster. So I would say if you go to location once, do um, a walkthrough one time, it should be okay. I've known filmmakers who have gone to the length of actually shooting the film beforehand. What I actually like to do is to create a storyboard. So I actually like to draw my storyboards, and I don't have it with me here, but I actually go through and draw shot by shot what I want to happen. Then I go to the location and I just check. I use my camera and I actually check to make sure that that's the shot I want and that's the shot I actually can get. If you are using a cinematographer separate who's not yourself, you can, it's good, you probably should bring them with you as well. So I would say, personally speaking, one time is actually enough for me, but again, it's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer with that one, but I would advise definitely to do some practice, some kind of practice, at least. Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and read her question. So Terry is asking, how do you find the film industry in Jamaica? Do you find that there is a lot of support here in Jamaica, particularly refunding? Okay. So, I mean, that's a question that has been asked a lot. Funding, funding is tough. It's definitely tough in Jamaica, especially because the persons we often look toward to are persons in the corporate world who are really looking for returns on their money. And in short film, there's really not usually a lot of return on your money. It's usually feature films that have return on your money. And in Jamaica, because of our particular situation, what we do a lot is short film. So funding is definitely difficult. However, in recent years, there have been efforts to try and educate the corporate world about film and about the benefits of supporting a short film. And I think JAMPRA and JAFTA, which is Jamaica Film and TV Association, they have been working together to get some kind of film engine going. And so I do think that there is, I mean, it's getting slightly better. It could be better, definitely. What I do find is not necessarily funding opportunities for just making films. So if you are willing to work, to volunteer your time on a film without being paid what you should be paid, or if you without being paid, full stop, then I find that there actually is a lot of opportunity in recent years, of course, for filmmaking, is what I find, because I find that in Jamaica, lots of people are willing to help. Usually, um, if you tell them an idea and that they love, they really are willing to help. But it's the funding and being paid a full salary, I find, is a problem.
Seeing as you're someone who has spent many years in the film industry, what is your camera of choice?
My
Or if you have
camera.
several different cameras.
Well, I have a Canon 70D, which is like my workhorse. But I have been doing some research, and I'm very interested in the Sigma. I can't remember the exact model right now, but there is a Sigma and there is a Panasonic GH47 or GH7, I believe it is. I can't remember. It's a GH model, but those two are the ones that I am actually very GH5. Thank you, Terry. Yes, those are the ones I'm actually very interested in. Once I do upgrade, because I do plan to upgrade, I would be interested in getting one of those. But right now, I have a Canon 70D, which is okay, but it's yeah. If I were shooting a film like a narrative film, which is what we spoke about, I would definitely have to rent a camera from someone else. Yeah, the Sonys aren't bad either. Yeah.
And a follow up to that, like what lenses do you use?
What lenses do I use? Do you mean like the specific, like a 50 millimeter or like the brand?
Yeah, like if it's a 50 millimeter, the brand or
Okay. Well, I am not. Well, I've been using Canon lenses so far because I have a 70D. But prime lenses, definitely use prime lenses for shooting. The brand, I'm not very. I mean, I usually allow the cinematographer to deal with that. But prime lenses, I've been told that is what you should use. For those on the call who are not familiar with prime lenses are the lenses that aren't they're fixed. They're a fixed focal length, so you can't zoom in or out with them. So you can buy a 50 millimeter prime lens, and that's where it will stay. It won't change. Right, fixed lenses.
Okay, and good night, everybody. I'm Raul. Well, I joined Daniel just to get a little vibe. As you know, I'm more into animation, so I'll still use the same methodology of working out shots. Definitely, I do storyboard, and it's just the methodology of just how to still prepare because I still have to do the same things with 3D. I'm more into 3D animation, not 2D. So therefore, it's almost like we're doing real-time shooting as what you'd be doing for filming. I'd still be working on camera shots and angles and lighting, etc. So I still would have to study environments, etc. Anything that's necessary for me to place that character, whether indoor or outdoor, I have to understand the same principles of cinematography in order to, even if it's stylized characters, or what we would call AAA or realistic looking characters, I still would have to understand how light affects things. But the principle though is just how to still prepare, so that's why I joined, and every information is always useful. That's how I live. Every day is R&D, and every bit of information and all industry techniques are relevant. So that's my reason for dropping in. All right.
Thank you so much for coming, Raul. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'm here. I'm gonna go back mute now.
Okay. All right. The question from Gabriel Ward. Thank you for the very informative presentation. Where online can we see some of those short films that you mentioned? Okay, so How to Kill a Fish is my film is on my Vimeo. The short film Whiplash and the short film Snapshot Kingston, those are both on YouTube. So you can just type in the names and the names of the directors and they should come up. And yep, that's so I try to use films that are all on YouTube.
Okay, let me punch in again quickly. Are you working or planning a feature-length film?
Yes,
Do you have something like that in making?
I am. I'm currently writing a screenplay for a feature-length film, as some of you on the call may know. And so I am hoping to be, have that produced in 2 years, but you know how these things go.
Yes. What length feature film are you planning to go for? What length?
I'm aiming for a 90-minute
90
feature.
minutes.
Yeah, aiming, yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And for just another piece of advice to those interested in doing a short film, if you do want to go the festival route, film festivals tend to like shorter films. The reason for that is that they can fit more short films into a slot as opposed to if they have a 30-minute short film, So I would say 10 minutes is a sweet spot for short films. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. I'm going to just wrap up now. Really appreciate you coming. Thank you again to Catapult Arts Grant for allowing me to host this and for sponsoring this. Really appreciate it. So go make films. If you do, I would love to. Please let me know about them. Please tag me in your post or anything. And thank you so much. And so I'll see you again another time. Please feel free to add me on Instagram at Daniel Russell Films. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter at Drew Myself and I. So thank you so much to everyone and have a good night and take care.